Hello, everyone. Welcome to Women Together Connect. My name is Antoinette, and I am so overjoyed to be here with you all today for our Tuesday Connect, and to see so many of you already saying hello in the Zoom chat. So whether you're in Zoom or YouTube, you can say a little hello and share where you're coming from today or where you are based. We have Arlington, Massachusetts, Reno, all the way to Sweden, and seems like everywhere in between: Philadelphia, Massachusetts, California, Seattle, Chicago, Connecticut, North Carolina, Portugal, wonderful, Colorado. And I know we are all just kind of trickling in. So I feel the holding of the gathering space that we are in a, if we were in a physical space, I feel as if we're sitting in circle together and we're all just kind of feeling that circle expand as we let all of us land here together. So as we do that, I invite you to perhaps just take a little moment to land in your own body and yourself. And a reminder, many of us I see have been here perhaps week after week after week for 3 years now in these online gatherings. Some of us may be joining for the first time. A warm welcome if that is you. It really has been a joy, but also, just a gift to have this space and time to come together, to learn from each other, to share with one another, and to reconnect both to ourselves and to each other. It is a space that has allowed for us to build resilience in ourselves and with each other. And I think we've all grown, whether you've been here one time or over and over. We continue to grow and evolve together. And I think personally, I definitely consider this community a space of growth and connection and care. So thank you for being here week after week, for yourselves, for each other, and for coming in from all over. So, and good to have you back. If you haven't been here for a long time, it's good to see you again. So let's just take a moment to land. We do tiny practices. I'm specifically really excited for our guest today, and who I'll introduce in a moment. When I heard about what her work has been and what she is bringing for us today, I just thought, oh, this is what we all need. So I'm very excited for these tiny practices today. And as we land here, I just invite us to, we think about, the practices that we do to develop mindfulness as something we do out there. And the tiny practices are really an invitation to, at any time in the day, I can do this. I can come back to myself. I can recenter. I can land. And so it's just a little tiny practice that invites us in to remind ourselves in those moments when we are kind of jumping out, that we can come back. So let's just take a moment to land at the beginning of our time together. If you can get your feet on the ground or feel a sense of connection to the earth somehow. So just feeling a sense of maybe the seat on the chair or on the cushion. And you can lower your gaze, or maybe even just move your gaze away from the computer screen for a moment. Sometimes that helps helps the eyes, it helps a whole lot of things, but just soften the gaze or close the eyes if that's in your practice. And as you do that, take a deep breath and relax. And just feel the breath as it enters the nostrils, and just notice the quality of the breath today. Perhaps let the palms of the hands relax. Maybe if you're just allowing your face to relax, letting your tongue relax, letting the back of your eyes relax. Just letting go of anything that may have happened before this moment, just being fully here, fully in the breath, fully in the body. And just tuning into the space around the heart, feeling the quality of the sensations, not even trying to name anything, just noticing what it feels like. And when you're ready, we can reconnect the screen to each other. I like to go into gallery view. And if you can, on Zoom, you can press view and go into gallery and just take in who's here and just send a warm welcome from your heart to theirs. Perhaps just taking in a few of the images on the screen. These wonderful, wonderful people who joined today. Maybe old friends, new friends. I love when the waves start because we see each other and we connect with each other and we share that, oh, I see you and I can see you seeing me. And when we do that, we can feel each other. Wonderful. So as we get started here, I'd love to maybe, if you'd like, just type into the chat what brought you here today. Perhaps it was specifically to see Nancy or the topic that we talked about, opening the door. And I'll just share a little bit about Nancy by way of introduction. She's a longtime student of Eastern spirituality. She's a psychotherapist, an interfaith minister, and the author of The Emotionally Exhausted Woman, Why You're Feeling Depleted and How to Get What You Need. Thank you for writing that book, Nancy, as well as numerous others. She's a thought leader and national speaker on women's empowerment, well-being, and mindful technology. She's been featured on Good Morning America, in the New York Times, and countless other media. She's a regular blogger for Psychology Today, and she's spent 25 years as a nationally top-ranked equestrian and serves as a performance consultant to professional artists and athletes. And, you know, Nancy, we're just so grateful to have you, in part because I think so many of us, you know, kind of just keep going and keep going and keep going. And I think the invitation that you offer to us to open the door a little bit and to let ourselves be with this idea of the emotionally exhausted woman is even just a wonderful start. So I turn it over to you for our session here today. And I'm so grateful that you agreed to join us. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for that lovely introduction, Antoinette, and welcome to all of you on this first day of official spring. Very exciting for new things to happen, one of which is the opening the door of this likability cage that we live in. And I'm going to talk about what that means and why it leads to our emotional exhaustion and burnout, emotional burnout. That's really my topic today, and has been over the last several years. A lot of people have asked me why I wrote this book. And I am a woman in this culture. I have been seeing women in my office for nearly 30 years and hearing the same things over and over and over again. I have daughters. So there are lots of reasons I wrote this book. And I've struggled with many of the things that I talk about. But for so many years, I've been hearing women describe a similar scenario where we are so good at filling the wants and needs of everyone in our life, but we really don't know or have long since disconnected from our own wants and needs. And we know who we are in all of our roles. We know who we are to and for everyone in our life. But we don't exactly know who we are separately for ourselves. And what happens, people will ask me, well, what exactly is emotional exhaustion? I always sort of giggle because when you are emotionally exhausted, you hear the term and you just say yes. You don't need a lot of language. That's me. You get it. But what it manifests as is a feeling of having given all you can give, of being overextended, overwhelmed, stretched, anorexically thin, bone tired from making everyone around us happy. And then this question starts to bubble up at some point in our life, God willing, what about what I need? And when we first start to ask that question, often we don't even know what that means. It's just a sense of where did I go? Where did I go in this sometimes beautiful life? But there's a sense of missing something authentic that is not about others. And, sometimes we experience fatigue or a lack of motivation. Often resentment starts to come in. So there are some emotional qualities to it as well. But there's a deep sense of wanting to re-inhabit one's own life. And so I got really interested in how we got here. And I had to step all the way back, obviously, to early conditioning, to this really, really strong message we received to be good girls. That's where it begins, right? To be nice and kind and giving and selfless. We know that message, right? We know that we're valued and rewarded when we focus our energy on taking care of others, that is our value. We really come to understand that as our value. And there's a big myth that I found among many women that we should be able to get what we need by giving other people what they need. And that if we can't, there's something inherently wrong with us. So that's buried into this conditioning often, which is a bit of a trap. But, none of this is our fault, really. All of this trying to be liked and focusing our energy on taking care of others, it's really about survival. Even in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Survival depends on safety. Safety sits right above water, food, and sleep. Safety is being liked. Safety is taking care of others for us, often women, and uber competent women, really, strong women get there often by taking care of others. So this tendency to focus on others, be liked, and be pleasing and take care of others' needs well, it becomes, first of all, it solves, it's a trifecta in terms of the hierarchy of needs. We're safe, we're included, we belong, and we have self-esteem because others like us. So those are all taken care of by, if you like me, then I'm safe, right? If I take care of your needs. So it becomes this background program that's running all the time in our consciousness, how to be liked. And I see it everywhere. I see it in the most confident women. I see it in not confident women and so on. But there's a problem, as you can imagine, and maybe have lived, with likability as our goal, which is that likability often comes in conflict with authenticity. And, they bump into each other frequently. And, we see this conflict thanks to some wonderful feminist psychologists, Carol Gilligan, Brown, and so on, right around our tweens, where we have to make a decision. And maybe you recall this, or maybe you have daughters that are tweens and so on, granddaughters. But in our tweens, we have to sort of make a decision. Are we going to go with likability, or are we going to go with authenticity? And so often, right there, we choose likability, and we get it. We get why we choose that. That makes us part of the club. That makes us part of the club. And, it's right around that time we see 12, 13, 14-year-olds just starting to not say what they really want, not say what's really true. And when you see that, it's so heartbreaking when you know what you're looking for, or looking at, I should say. But we start deciding right around there, this is just a little history, that having relationships with other people is more important than having a relationship with ourselves. And that being in relationship is more important than being a self. And the last thing I would say that I ran into many times is that, for sure, being liked is more important than liking ourselves. So the best that we can hope for, we learn, is to live off these fumes of being well perceived, right? We'll trade that in for being known for real and being real. We get to be well perceived. And, that happens, that split in our tweens so often. But the problem is that tween becomes a 20-something, a 30-something, 40, 50, 60, and often that split is not healed. And then what we find, right, is that we step into a culture that has this gigantic narrative, the perfect woman. And, we know the adjectives, right? Helpful, available, kind, caring, thin, not too thin, smart, not too intimidating, selfless. We could come up with, modest, but there are lots of them. We know what they are. They're sort of the rules now for being liked. But when we're talking about who to be, right, as women, often what we're taking in is who not to be. That's really the message that women receive, right? So don't be, you can write them in the chat, selfish, needy, difficult, demanding, loud, bossy, controlling, complicated. Write them in, yes. Aggressive, angry, high maintenance, diva, prima donna, ballbuster, man, a lot, a control freak, too much, too loud, too competitive, too complicated, too hard-edged, too sure of ourselves, too out for ourselves, too focused on ourselves. Yeah, overbearing, that's it. Opinionated, we know them, right? Yes. Oh my goodness. These are great. So, and one thing we know, I'll tell you, from studies, is one thing that doesn't mix with likability is powerful and successful. Doesn't mix with it. Great study done by Columbia Business School professors. They took a case of a very successful venture capitalist, Heidi Roizen, and she had been an entrepreneur in Silicon Valley, became a venture capitalist. In any case, they decided to take her case and present it to their students. They gave half the students the same case with the name Heidi, and half the students the same person with the name Howard. And same case, not another word changed. And when they went and asked the students, tell us what you think about Heidi or Howard, Howard was seen as smart, confident, likable and a guy you probably wanted to go golfing with. Heidi was seen as aggressive, out for herself, and probably not that likable. So it was the same history. So we know, right, that power and success and likability, not such great bedfellows, nor is, interestingly enough, claiming credit for what we have done. And if a man executive claims credit for what he's created, smart, confident, deserving. A woman, arrogant. So there are certain things we know for sure, right? But in terms of studying this concept of burnout and emotional exhaustion and why we got here, we spend so much energy trying not to be labeled and dismissed. We don't say when we're hurt because we don't want to be needy. We don't send the food back that we didn't order because we don't want to be high maintenance or difficult, right? And what ends up happening is that we end up living in this, I call it a likability cage. It's a gilded cage, maybe, right? Lots of cash and prizes in the cage, but it's a limiting cage. And it ultimately leads us to be depleted, to be utterly depleted. And, in this likability cage, it always strikes me as so funny because we are so intent and we spend all of this energy on getting people to like us who we'll either never see again or we don't even like ourselves. Client recently told me, she didn't ask the flight attendant for a blanket because she wanted her to like her. Another woman didn't ask the barista to put more milk in her coffee because she wanted to be the bright spot in his day and the fun one. These are people we'll never see again. And in a more somber and more tragic example of that, my daughter, who is in college, a dear friend of hers was recently date raped. And she didn't report because she wanted the guys in the fraternity to still like her. So we see this across the board in every generation. We see this. And, there are these complicated reasons why we're so burned out and so exhausted, right? And it's because we're pouring all of this energy and attention into policing ourselves, managing ourselves. Right? This is welcome. This isn't welcome. How can I not be judged? And at the same time, we're spending all of this energy controlling the other person's experience of us. How are you receiving us? Right? Imagine if we had all that energy to put back in ourselves. And we're also exhausted, I can say, and this, I talk a lot about it in the book. I'm really kind of distilling this down to see what resonates with you all. But because when we're so focused on others, what we're disconnected from is ourselves. We've left the body. We've left the deep knowing, the still small voice. We stop listening to what is true for us. We stop. And if we're not in touch with that, we're disconnected from our most deepest vitality and power source, right? If we're out there trying to get you to perceive me well, we've left home, and home is our ground. And we end up in this adversarial relationship with ourselves where certain parts are welcome and certain parts are not. If it's not going to be liked, we have to deny it or reject it or blame it, imagining that we can choose which parts we want, as if the truth that we're experiencing is up to us, right? We're to blame if we have these parts. And that begins this unending treadmill of self-improvement. If we could just get ourselves into the right shape, right? And so again, we have this deep and complicated exhaustion, and the self-care industry is all too happy to step in right there and give us an answer, right? And that $14 billion answer, industry-wise, is this pampering industry, this gigantic, go get a mani-pedi, right? Go get a loofah sponge, lay in a bubble bath. Oh, wonderful. I'm for all of that. But they don't hit the problem. They don't come near the fundamental exhaustion. We have the largest well-being industry we've ever had, ever. And we're more unwell, according to studies, than we've ever been. And it's not just really because the treatments are temporary and superficial, but it's really because the treatments themselves strengthen the bars of this likability cage. They keep us chasing another destination. Might be a guru, it might be the right massage, it might be the sound bath, but again, outside of us. And the road back to replenishment is this way, is to reclaim and re-inhabit that perhaps tween that was left so long ago. So, we are chasing something that we already are, right? And at the same time, self-care is really code for self-improvement. That's really what it is, right? And we have to get hip to that. We have to get that there's nothing incomplete here. But the real problems with self-care is that we're taking care of a self that's been taught to be selfless. So there's an inherent paradox there, right? And also that self-care, it's not something that we buy or do. It is something that we are. It is a relationship that we carry on with ourselves that's curious and friendly and kind and on our own side. So that brings me to this question, which is, well, what is real self-care, right? I'll give you a little taste of what is a much wider approach in the book, but real self-care has to do with redefining safety. We're redefining safety from likability to truth, to being authentic. That starts to be our safe place. And I will tell you, we give up some cash and prizes. There's a lot of payoff in being likable all the time. We know how to do it. We're usually really good at it. But there's a different sweetness and a different power in saying what's true, in standing in our own shoes and being real. Different kind of payoff, right? When we're willing to take the risk that is to be authentic. And speaking from somebody who really had to go through that transition, of having been everything to everyone and having a whole identity built on the person who could do absolutely everything, right? But having disappeared in the process, I can say that the ground that I stand on in being real, maybe it's sometimes not as easy, but it comes with a much more solid sense of having returned to my own life. So how do we do that, right? What are some simple, not easy, simple and easy are very different words, steps that we can take? First one, most basic, sounds so simple, but so many of us don't do it, which is to become aware of how we actually are. Right? We're so focused on how everyone else is and how everyone else is with us, right? Is everyone else okay? That we, again, have stopped attending to ourselves as a destination. So throughout the day, we do just what Antoinette did there, which is and in shorter form, we put our hand on our heart, maybe on our belly too, and we just say, hey, how are you? And we don't go to the mind to answer the question, right? How are you in body? What's happening? How are you in heart? How are you in spirit? How are you, a busy thought mind right now or not? We just check in and we take one single conscious breath, which is to say, I'm here, right? So we do that. I probably do that every couple hours. Takes maybe 7 seconds, 8 seconds. We don't really look for an answer. Oh, I'm angry at this person, or, oh, I'm disappointed. It's not about that. It's just come home. Oh, hello. Okay. There's a someone living this life. We also, that's the first, aware of presence, just presence through the breath. The breath is our portal, always right into now, direct flight into now. The second thing is you start to notice how much energy you're putting into being liked. Am I dancing circles around for this person? Why am I doing that? What am I afraid of? We start getting curious, not judgmental, curious about our own behavior. Why am I behaving this way when I don't even want to be having this conversation? I'm entertaining them or whatever it might be. We start to notice that habit. And then we also start to notice how frequently we adjust our truth, right? How frequently we sweeten, doctor, play with our truth to make it okay, to make it work. Make it work, make it work. So it's this adjustment process where we're really not okay with the other person's response if it's not positive. So how do we need to play with our truth to make it work, right? And our assumption all the time that whatever is not working is our fault and ours to fix, right? To just start to notice these are the conditioned habits. So that's the awareness piece. Part 2, in terms of our steps, baby steps, is start to bring want online. We are governed by should. We know all the shoulds. Start to just insert want. What do I actually want? I know what I should do, and I know the identity that gets me. That's wonderful. And sometimes we have to do a lot of shoulds. But start to include want in your decision-making process, right? What can I ask myself here that would invite the real longing? Sometimes we can do it, sometimes we can't. Some years ago, one of my dear friends said, what would happen if you lived your life by want? Question changed my life. I don't think I had thought about want for a really long time. Should was really paying off for me, right? But it started to not pay off for me. So when we open this gate of want, what we're opening is the gate and the cage door. We're reconnecting. Our want is our authentic self. It's the real longing. And the first wants that come in, I'll just give you a quick warning, are going to be shoulds dressed up in wants clothing. There's still shoulds. Go through them. Keep pushing. Find the longing that belongs to you that's not about who you will be to another if you do that. Find your want. And here's the third one, and maybe it's the biggest one, which is start telling the truth in little ways. Start telling the actual truth. You know, people come to me and they pay me all this money to tell them things like, if you want to live a more truthful life, tell the truth, right? Sometimes we have to frickin' do it, as a friend of mine says. And we have to tell the truth and then stop speaking. Stop speaking. Because what we tend to do is then run on apologizing for what's true, right? Or justifying why it's true, right? So in baby steps, right? Hey, I'd like a little more milk in my coffee. Yes. Baby steps, right? Yes, I'd love it if we could get the suntan lotion because I'll burn. Might not be the most pleasing, but you wouldn't believe how strong, successful, powerful women don't exactly tell the truth, again, because of the labels and judgments awaiting them. So we start small. We didn't get this way overnight, and we're not going to not be this way overnight. We work our way up to, hey, that really hurt me, what you said, that's not okay. Or whatever our big ask might be, right? I don't like it, actually, when you do that, right? And this is when we start showing up and taking responsibility for our part, but not the response. I care about your response, but I'm not responsible for it, right? Doesn't make us a bitch to have an experience that makes you not okay. I can sit with your not okay, and I can care about it, and I can hear it, but I didn't cause it. It's breaking the codependence. That is the beginning of a new life. Take care of my side of the street. I tell the truth kindly and respectfully. And now let me hear, oh, that lands like that on you. Wow. Now we're starting to be an independent person back home. I always tell my uber competent women, of which I have many in my practice, that the willingness to be disappointing in a moment is a superpower. So I want to send you out. I'm going to hand back to Antoinette in a moment to breakout rooms, but a couple contemplations you might play with. If they're not interesting to you, just throw them out. But one is, where in your life do you feel you trade authenticity for likability? Maybe a relationship, a situation, just a thought. And what are you really afraid of in stepping into that and showing up in a more real way? And then one other question, you can try it out among your breakout group, is what's something you could say to yourself, or a way you could support yourself or each other in being willing to take this risk that it is to be real and to really step into our own presence. And I call that coming home, that our real ground and safety is to be on our own side and embodied and inhabiting ourselves. So play with those, see how they work. If they're not interesting, come up with your own, but meet and see what in all this resonated with you. So Antoinette, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you so much, Nancy. Wonderful, just powerful session and questions here that you have for us. So I invite you to stay with anything that may be coming up for you all, and then really just deep listening to each other. So this can bring up a lot, and there may be things that are really positive and, here are my wants and needs. And as Nancy said, there may be fears and there may be a lot that's coming up. So just recognizing that we don't know what the other person had for breakfast, let alone their life history of suppressing our wants and needs as women. So we're going to just try and take as much time as we can for that. Unfortunately, it'll be about 15 minutes just so we can keep to the time here. But I'm sure that we will find ways to go deeper. So enjoy the time together, share your name, where you're coming from, and anything that's coming up in response to the questions that Nancy just asked here, or in response to what you just experienced. So yeah, follow what's true for you is what I'll say, following what Nancy said. So enjoy the time together. See you back in about 15 minutes.